I was talking to a young fellow the other day, bright kid, making about 60,000 a year, and he told me something that stopped me cold. He said, "Warren, I've got 23,000 in my savings account. I feel like I'm doing everything right, but nothing's really changing." And I thought to myself, pauses. That's exactly the problem. See, most people think the hard part is getting to $20,000. They celebrate hitting that number, and they should. But here's what nobody tells you. $20,000 isn't the finish line. It's not even the starting line. It's the launch pad. And if you don't understand what changes after 20,000, you might sit on that money for 10 years and wake up barely ahead of where you started. So let me tell you a story about two people with the exact same $20,000. And why one of them is now financially free while the other is still living paycheck to paycheck. Here's what most people don't realize about money. Below $20,000, you're playing defense. You're building your emergency fund, you're covering your basics, you're trying not to drown, and that's important work. Essential work. But after 20,000, pauses, leans forward. After 20,000, the entire game changes from defense to offense. Let me show you exactly what I mean with some simple math. Say you've got $5,000 saved. If you earn a very respectable 10% return, and that's well above what you'll get in a savings account, you make $500 that year. Not bad, but it's not changing your life. You can't pay rent with that, you can't buy a car with that. But once you've got $20,000, that same 10% return is $2,000. Now we're talking about a decent vacation, a used car down payment, an investment in yourself. And here's where it gets really interesting. At 50,000, that's 5,000 a year. At 100,000, it's 10,000. Nearly $1,000 a month while you sleep. According to a Vanguard study from 2023, investors with portfolios between $20 and $50,000 had median annual returns that covered an average of 18% of their living expenses. The psychology of seeing your money work for you at that scale? It completely changes how you think about earning and spending. Now you might be thinking, "Warren, I can't get 10% returns consistently." And you're right to be skeptical. That's good thinking. But here's the thing. The S&P 500 has averaged about 10% annually over the past century. You don't need to be smart. You don't need to pick stocks. You just need to be patient. But let me tell you something that surprised me after studying wealthy people for over 6 decades. The math isn't the main thing that changes after $20,000. It's your brain. See, when you have 5,000 or 10,000 saved, you're still thinking like a saver. Every dollar that comes in, you're thinking, "Where do I put this to keep it safe?" That's poverty thinking. And I don't mean that as an insult, I mean it literally. When you've been without money, your brain is wired to protect what you have. But after 20,000, something clicks. You start thinking like an investor. You stop asking, "How do I keep this safe?" and start asking, "How do I make this grow?" I saw this in myself back in the early 1950s when I'd saved up my first $9,800. And yes, I remember the exact amount. I was terrified of losing it. But once I crossed 10,000, then 20,000, something shifted. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was excited. I started seeing opportunities instead of risks. There's actually research on this. A 2022 study from the Journal of Consumer Psychology found that people with liquid savings above $25,000 were 3.7 times more likely to describe themselves as looking for investment opportunities rather than protecting what they have. The number 20,000 seems to be right around that psychological threshold. And this is where most people get stuck. They hit 20,000, they feel secure for the first time in their lives, and they freeze. They leave it in a savings account, earning 0.5%, while inflation eats 3% of their purchasing power every year. In real terms, they're going backwards. Let me tell you about my friend. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah saved $20,000 by age 30. Impressive. She put it in a high-yield savings account at 4%. By age 40, she had about 29,000. Not bad, right? Now let me tell you about Michael. Same age, same 20,000 at 30. But Michael put his money into a low-cost index fund averaging 10% annually. By 40, he had $51,000. Same starting point, same 10 years. The difference? $22,000. That's more than the original amount saved. But here's where it gets really interesting. Sarah keeps her $29,000 in savings for another 10 years to age 50. She ends up with about $43,000. Michael? His $51,000 grows to $132,000. Pauses for effect. They started with the same $20,000. 20 years later, Michael has 3 times what Sarah has. And Michael didn't add a single penny after his initial investment. That's not luck. That's not genius. That's compound interest, and it's the most powerful force in finance. But, and this is crucial, it only starts to feel powerful after you have enough money for it to work on. Einstein supposedly called compound interest the 8th wonder of the world. I don't know if he actually said that, but if he didn't, he should have. Because here's the truth. Below $20,000, compound interest is nice. Above $20,000, it's life-changing. Now you might be thinking, "Warren, you're telling me to risk my hard-earned money in the stock market." What if I lose it? And that's a fair question. It's the question everyone asks. But let me flip it around on you. What if I told you that keeping that 20,000 in a savings account is actually the biggest risk you could take? See, most people think risk means chance of losing money. But in finance, risk means chance of not reaching your goals. And when your savings account pays 4% and inflation runs at 3%, you're only growing at 1% in real terms. At that rate, it takes 72 years to double your money. 72 years. You'll be dead. Chuckles softly. Meanwhile, if you'd invested that 20,000 in an S&P 500 index fund, historical data shows it would double every 7 to 10 years on average. You could see it double 3, 4, maybe 5 times in your working life. The Federal Reserve reported in 2023 that the median American household has about $8,000 in savings. You know what the median high net worth household has? Over 400,000. And here's the kicker. Most of them didn't start rich. They just understood this principle earlier. The opportunity cost of doing nothing with your 20,000 might be $500,000 over your lifetime. Let that sink in for a moment. So what do you actually do after you hit 20,000? Let me give you 3 specific moves that change everything. Move number 1, split your money into buckets. Keep 3 to 6 months of expenses completely liquid. That's your security blanket, probably 6 to 10,000 for most people. This stays in a high-yield savings account. You need to sleep at night, but everything above that, that's your opportunity fund. This is money that can be invested for the medium to long term. For most people with 20,000, that means you've got 10 to 14,000 ready to work for you. Move number 2, automate your offense. Once you've got your 20,000 foundation, set up automatic monthly investments, even if it's just $200 a month. Why? Because after 20,000, every dollar you add has 2 decades or more to compound. A dollar invested at 30 is worth $17 at retirement if it grows at 10%. But you've got to be consistent. I started doing this in my 20s. I'd pay myself first. 10% of everything that came in went straight to investments before I saw it. Made it automatic. Took the emotion out of it. Move number 3, leverage your position. Now, I'm not talking about borrowing money. That's usually a bad idea. I'm talking about using your 20,000 to create opportunities. With 20,000, you can invest in yourself, take that course, get that certification that doubles your income, start a side business with actual capital behind it, max out your Roth IRA contributions for a few years, buy quality investments when the market dips and everyone's panicking. See, here's what wealthy people know. $20,000 isn't savings money anymore. It's opportunities money. It's freedom money. It's the difference between reacting to life and directing it. You know what separates the wealthy from everyone else? It's not intelligence. It's not even income, though that helps. It's time perspective. Most people think in days and weeks. They see their paycheck, pay their bills, and whatever's left over is spending money. That's short-term thinking. Wealthy people think in decades. They look at $20,000 and see $200,000 in 20 years. They see $400,000 in 30 years. They see freedom at 55 instead of working until 70. Let me put this in perspective. According to recent data from the Social Security Administration, the average retiree receives about $19,000 a year from Social Security. That's it, after working 45 years. But if you invest $20,000 today at age 30 and just let it compound at 10%, not adding another dime, you'd have $380,000 by age 65. At a safe 4% withdrawal rate, that's $15,000 a year in passive income, almost as much as Social Security, just from that one-time $20,000 investment. Now imagine if you kept adding to it. This is why everything changes after 20,000. Not because 20,000 is rich, it's not, but because 20,000 is enough to start playing the long game. It's enough to make compound interest your employee instead of your enemy. Here's something that took me years to understand, and I'm going to give it to you right now. Poor people work for money. Middle-class people save money. Wealthy people, they put money to work. When you've got $5,000, you're still working for money. When you've got 20,000, you can start making money work for you. It's not enough to quit your job, don't be silly, but it's enough to change the trajectory of your entire life. I've seen too many good people work hard, save diligently, get to $20,000 or $30,000, and then stop. They think they've arrived. They haven't. They've just reached the point where the real work can begin. The real tragedy isn't people who never save money. It's people who save money and then park it in a corner earning nothing for 30 years. That's like buying a Ferrari and leaving it in the garage because you're afraid to scratch it. Your money is a tool. Use it. Closing. 12:30 to 13:45. So let me leave you with this. If you've got $20,000 or more sitting in a savings account, I want you to ask yourself one question. What is this money for? If the answer is emergencies, fine. Keep 6 months of expenses liquid. But the rest? That money has a job to do. And its job isn't to sit there losing value to inflation. Its job is to build your future. $20,000 invested today could be your early retirement. It could be your kid's college education. It could be the down payment on financial freedom. But only if you let it work. Start small if you need to. Move 5,000 into an index fund and see how it feels. Get comfortable with the idea that money can grow without you doing anything. Then move more. Build the habit of seeing yourself as an investor, not just a saver. Because here's the truth that nobody wants to tell you. Time is going to pass anyway. 20 years from now, you're going to be 20 years older whether you invest this money or not. The only question is whether you'll be wealthy or still working. The choice is yours. But make it count. Pauses, slight smile. That's all I've got for you today. Now get out there and put that money to work. If this helped you think differently about your money, do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, the best time to start was yesterday. The second best time is right now.